Road to the IPO, les podcasts des entrepreneurs agréés.
Got so much weight on my shoulders. Enough to knock me out, but I'm still holding the throne. You'll never know till it's over. So pretty it hurts. Just beware of the thorns. You're an honest man.
Today's podcast is in English, and I have the great honor to have on the show Philippe Telio, the founder of the Startupfest Festival. Hey Phil, how's it going?
It's going great, thanks. Yourself?
Thank you. Before we start the podcast, I really want to thank you because I remember in 2016 I went to the Startupfest and you were the first one I did a video interview you. I asked you like 2 questions, 20 seconds, and since then I started doing podcasting, so I'm really thankful for that. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Look, you're thanking me, I thank you. We do everything we do to inspire people to take risks and do new things. So,
Yes.
I love it when people come and try out new ideas, and especially when they work out. So,
Yes,
congratulations to you.
So for those who don't know you, can you introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Phil Telio. I'm the founder of Startupfest.
Yes.
What else can I say? I'm also on the board of Osmo, so the Notman House.
Yes.
And I've been in the startup community now for 10 years. I did a lot of startup stuff when I was, in the beginning of my career.
Yeah.
And now I support entrepreneurs, in the best way I know how, which is to connect them.
Yes. So before we talk about the Startupfest, how do you become an entrepreneur? Where does it come from?
The general question of how one becomes an entrepreneur, or how I became an entrepreneur.
You.
Well, my journey was really, I would say, quite organic.
Okay.
I think I always wanted to be an entrepreneur as a kid. It was always an idea. I studied engineering,
Yes.
and I always thought, I would become some sort of, real estate person. And so studying engineering was a good thing, and I would be my own boss. So I think I always had that in mind. But like many people, I came out of university and I got a job.
Okay.
And so I did that for many years, and I worked for technology companies that were growing, always very early, very entrepreneurial in nature.
Yes.
Like being part of any startup.
Yeah.
Even if you're not the founder, you kind of feel like you're an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And it wasn't until we sold our businesses. So I worked for a company called Locus Dialogue at the time.
Yeah.
They got acquired by an American company.
Okay.
And I found myself all of a sudden with nothing to do.
Okay.
And so that kind of launched my entrepreneurial journey. I started to do some consulting on my own.
Okay.
And that became, a business now of running, events around the world. And so that's why I said it's very natural. It wasn't a pre-programmed, predestined thing for me. I kind of always knew I wanted to do it, and life kind of pushed me in that direction. There's nothing like losing your job to, become an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's true. So you talk about connecting people. Did you start right there? Do you figure out maybe I should connect some people together, maybe in a small events and everything? How do you start it?
Look, I think it's human nature, when you're in, when I was working for the other technology companies, I was very much involved in sales and business development and relationship management. And relationships are about people. It's about creating connections.
Yes.
And when you're trying to convince, a client to come on board, you recognize the value of creating those connections and those, relationships.
Yes.
And so, we created our first event because the idea was to bring people together, again, in this goal of bringing customers and friends together and create something interesting. But yes, ultimately, that creating connections is what events are really all about.
Yes.
You go to an event because you want to meet, a customer or an investor or, a co-founder or employees or whatever it may be. We go to those places, we go to events to meet and connect.
Yes.
So it's just something that was natural, I think, for me to do, I guess.
You see, we are in Montreal, so I go to a lot of events too, and I find Montreal is I don't know if it's a small place, but you always see the same people, So can we talk about the Montreal community of entrepreneurs? How do you see it?
Sure. Well, I'll start by saying that one of the reasons we created Startupfest, which in its original iteration was called the International Startupfest, was the goal was to bring people from outside of Montreal into Montreal because, like you just said, we've sort of, we'd run other events, smaller events. We would call them Startup Camp in those days. And we keep on doing it over and over again. It was a certain size, and it was always the same people.
Yes,
So
yes.
you see the same people if you go to the same events.
Yes.
And actually, there are groups that you don't see in Montreal
Yes.
unless you really seek out things that are different to what you're used to.
Okay.
Yesterday, I was at an event that is hosted by Montreal Inc.
Yes.
There are other events that I went to recently that were organized by the Young Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
Then there are things that happen at Notman House or Osmo, or then there's the Queer Tech group, and then there's the Women in Tech group,
Yes,
and there's a whole bunch of different groups. So in reality, there are it's not that small.
Yeah.
It's a good size. I find Montreal actually has this ideal size
Yes.
for a startup community, and really for any community, is that it's big enough to have everything you want in a vibrant community, but it's also small enough that, in effect, if you don't know everybody, you can meet them like that.
Yeah, true.
And so I find there's a lot of diversity and a lot of interesting things going on here, that, we don't need to be, huge or vastly bigger,
Yes.
I think, to succeed. I think we're doing very well with what we have.
So do you decide, you want to bring other people from international to Montreal? You want to bring those people to create a more big community than just the Montreal people?
Yeah, because, your community needs to have connections to the outside world.
Okay.
Unless you're building a startup specifically for your local market, like delivering food locally,
Yes.
which is just a requirement for the local market,
Yes.
if you're doing something that is meant to be big,
Yes.
you need to connect internationally.
Yes.
And you need it for many reasons. You need it because for financing, often enough, bigger rounds of funding are going to come from outside of the local market.
Okay.
But also for hires and finding talent and things of that sort, it's important. And then, of course, if you're doing a business-to-business startup,
Yes.
you need connections to clients around the world.
Okay.
So the importance of having those international pipes is vital. Once you have a relationship with one person, now somebody can maybe tap in. If I were to call you up and say, do you know somebody in Boston? You may know somebody in Boston, you could help connect me to
Yes.
Boston. So it really is, I would say, in effect, vital for us to have that international connections for the benefit of everybody.
Okay.
Because one person with international connections now can feed, a few
Everyone.
hundred people.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Startupfest. So that's the general idea of the Startupfest. Connecting all these people, even international, Montreal. So what do you decide really to start the Startupfest?
When did I decide?
Yeah.
Really, I decided, I think it was in 2011, so we're in our 9th edition
Okay.
this year. So about 9 years ago, there was still snow on the ground. It just came to me, this idea that we needed, to create more international connections
Okay.
for Montreal. It was certainly a little bit of a crazy idea at the time.
Yes.
Nobody had done it. There had never been a startup event of 1,000 people in the city ever. Most people didn't think it was going to happen or work.
Okay.
But few key people did.
Uh-huh.
And in those days, the startup community was really much smaller.
Yes, yes.
Those that at least consider themselves startups.
Okay.
There have always been small businesses.
Uh-huh.
But there was like a half dozen people that got in behind us and said, yeah, this is a good idea. This is worth trying out and doing. So we chose to do it.
Wow, almost 10 years, Phil.
Almost 10 years. It's incredible.
Wow, it's incredible.
Time really flies.
Yeah. It seems like it becomes bigger and bigger with the, this year is going to be bigger than last year.
Look, we always prepare for the size of the event that it was last year.
Yeah.
And it always tends to grow. So we've had growths of between 20 and 50% year over year, which is big growth.
Yeah.
So last year we were 6,400 or so people.
Yes.
I expect we'll be about somewhere between there and 7,000. But you never know. The event world is such that you never know really until the last weeks, who's coming in. So if there's any request I would have for people is if you're coming, buy your tickets early. It makes all of our hearts here at Startupfest beat just a little bit slower.
And you know what? At the beginning, there's not that much people that support you, but right now I think the government is behind you guys, and you see all these entrepreneurs communities, you see a lot of people behind your Startupfest now.
Yeah, you know, this is a very important point. I think the governments try and do their best to support entrepreneurship because it's good for the economy. It's good for creating jobs. It's good for, you know, tax base and all those, you know, those wonderful things, and the reason government gets involved. We do this always with a focus on the entrepreneur.
Yes.
That's our, you know, it's not our singular focus. Of course, we care about all the other groups, the investors and the government grantors and the community leaders and champions and stuff. They're all important. The whole ecosystem needs to be there. But the main value driven has to always be to the entrepreneur, because that's the core. That's what we're doing it for. If by default we end up by creating more entrepreneurs and create more jobs, fantastic, so be it.
And I want to say to all these people that are watching and listening that Startupfest do change life. It changed mine. In 2016, I met Phil, and most of all the entrepreneurs I had on the show came from the Startupfest, because it's so easy to get to them. They really relax. They're trying to talk to people, so you don't. It's open.
Okay, we'll come back this year. We'll give you a space, and you can just interview people all day long.
No, but for real, I interview a lot of Dave, Phil from Milo, Julian Bro. They all came from there.
All fabulous entrepreneurs. Look, you know, in 10 years, what's nice is, because we've done this from our heart and we've tried to build an event for the entrepreneurs, most of the successful entrepreneurs you see in the city, those that you name, have gone through Startupfest because, you know, we're Montreal's event. I mean, we're an international event, but at the end of the day, this event is, you know, built for and by Montrealers.
Do you realize how many partnerships did they create the Startupfest? I got so many partnerships. Like, there's some people I met there that now have like a friendship, but also business partnerships. So.
Look, we hear anecdotal stories all the time, you know, of our volunteers coming in, eventually meeting, you know, a co-founder and building a huge business and exiting and all those wonderful things. So we do hear those stories. We don't do a big job to actually track that stuff. Although our government partners would love us to do a better job at actually identifying the value, and it's natural because, you know, they invest money and it's public sector money, and so they want to be able to justify that the money that they're investing has a, you know, a real tangible return. And so up until now, it's really just anecdotal stories, and we hear them all the time. People write us letters saying how it changed their life and how they met their partner, or they met their investor, or and to date we haven't had anybody say I've met my wife or my husband here, which we hope. I've always wanted somebody to get married at Startupfest. So maybe one day somebody will go. I think it's the ultimate startup is.
Any big business that came out from the Startupfest in the last 9 years?
Look, big businesses, there's, like I said, you know, so many have gone through here. Guys like Bruno Morancy that are now running, you know, Techstars AI. Guys like Dan Robichaud and, you know, Marc-Antoine Ross, you know, from Password Box. I mean, LP Morris came before. I mean, everybody, you know, what's really interesting is as you look at these people that are super successful today and remembering what it was like, and I look back in pictures or people that I put on stage, people like Julian Smith in the first year, and today, I mean, he's a big man. You know, he's running a multi-million-dollar enterprise. You know, he was, in the time, he was a great author, but he wasn't an entrepreneur. And so it's really, you know, it's fabulous to have been doing the same thing over 10 years and see all the wonderful people that have come through and succeeded. Of course, there are plenty that don't succeed. That's the reality of entrepreneurship.
So before we go to the second part of the podcast, where can people reach out to you? Which platforms are you on?
What platforms am I not on? I find that some startup needs to solve that problem. But look, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, you know, somewhat on Instagram. I'm not, you know, huge in social media. I don't, this is not a personal ego trip running Startupfest, so it's not, there are other, you know, big personalities that run events, and it's all about their personality, and they do very well. I mean, it's not to criticize them in any way, shape, or form. For me, it's about creating Startupfest. So Startupfest has channels and Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and all those things. But yeah, the best way to reach me is usually email or text.
It's true, because I'm gonna interview Philippe Telio. Who is that? Was that Startupfest? Oh, okay, Startupfest. I think the brand is bigger than the man himself, almost.
Yes, and that was a decision. I think there are different types of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
There are people that do it because they seek the fame, and that's fine. It's just not. It wasn't my interest was to necessarily seek fame and all this. I actually try and shy away. I mean, even these sorts of things, I don't do them too often.
Sure.
I mean. I'm always happy to help out when somebody as charming as you comes along.
Yes.
But it's not about creating personal profile and figuring out how to maximize that value.
Cool. We're gonna put all the links so you can reach out to Phil. So I want to ask you why technology holds a big place in the Startupfest. Why?
Look, in the beginning, well, first of all, my background was in technology. And when you talk about startups, you've got small businesses and then you've got startups.
Yes.
And startups, by definition, are companies that are, in technology, high growth businesses, or a business that's looking for, product market fit, or there's plenty of definitions.
Yes.
But technology is one of those definitions. But above and beyond, it's not because we set out to create this, it's that when you're bringing people together, and in our case it was investors and corporates and startups, there was a natural request and sort of desire on both sides of that fence.
Yes.
The investors are looking for great deals to invest in, and then startups are looking for investors to help them grow. And so there's a good, yin and yang, if you like. And that doesn't exist in every other sector. Technology is one of them. Certainly in pharma and stuff there is as well, and we have done some of that stuff, but it's usually pharma tech or biotech or something of that sort. So it's a question of, we're not just about educating people, because that you can do in any business.
Yes.
Even if you're going to go and start a hair salon, you need to be educated on how to run a business.
Yes.
We're far more about how to build a high growth business.
Okay.
And high growth is still today, pretty much exclusively in technology.
Because you also do AI Fest. Also, I think last year was weed. Talk a little bit of weed.
So we called it Cannabis Fest. We did Crypto Fest, Cannabis Fest, AI Fest, Art Up Fest. And of course, Startup Fest and Scale Up Fest and Accelerator Fest. Lots and lots and lots of fests in Startup Fest. So look, we try out different industries, but our interest is always going to be the technology that drives that sector.
Okay.
And so when we did, for example, Cannabis Fest, which would seem to be far out from technology, really we were exploring the technologies that were going to drive the industry.
Okay.
Both from a promotion, distribution, extraction, grow lighting, and all those sorts of things. It was always about tech. And even Art Up Fest, which we ran as an art event at Startup Fest, the idea was that artists and startups share a similar reality.
Yes.
They need money, they need exposure, they need, all sorts of education and stuff of that sort to really build a business, I guess, at the end of the day. And so what we did is we went looking for a very particular type of artist. And it was an artist that was using technology in their art.
Yes.
And we said, look, it's got to be plugged in. It's got to be lit up. It has to have some component of technology.
Yes.
The more technology, the better, but it didn't have to, it just had to have some notion of technology. Yes. And so, look, it's what we love. We also, as a group of people that are organizing Startupfest, we love technology.
Okay,
We get off on it, so.
All right. Hey, for those that listen to this and they ask you, Phil, how can I win the Startupfest prize? What are the requirements?
Or be damn good, first of all. Look, our prizes, and in fact, we do a $100,000 prize at Startupfest, and it's for any startup at the event.
Okay.
We're doing a new prize this year, by the way. It's a $100,000 investment only for women in technology.
Okay.
So we'll be doing $200,000 prizes this year. But look, the way to win that is, first of all, you got to have a good idea. Everybody at the event, every startup there is eligible for the prize. All they need to do in a first phase is impress one of the 15 or so judges we have.
Okay.
So they're walking around the event for the first 2 days, or they're sitting in a tent. They've got a special lanyard. It's up to the startup to go find a judge and make sure that at least one of the judges shortlists them.
Okay.
And if they can do that, then they have a shot. They're usually one of the finalist 10.
Yeah.
And in the morning, we interview the 10. And at that point, look, it's It's hard to say. You know, we've got a group of angel investors, and so they don't have the same requirements as a big VC.
Yes.
You know, of high traction. We're not doing big due diligence. We're looking for great idea, and we're looking for great people, and of course a market that makes sense.
Yes.
And then we vote with our hearts. You know, we're taking a decision within a few hours. And so it's like the Malcolm Gladwell book, Blink, just Blink. So it's about taking a snap judgment.
Yes, true.
But I always say the most important thing is to be memorable to the judges over the first 2 days, so that at least one of them shortlists you.
Yes.
That's the most
Are
important
you
thing.
still doing the grandmother's prize?
We still do the grandmother's prize.
For those
in
that
fact.
don't win the big prize, there's the grandmother prize.
It's actually probably one of the bigger prizes, if not bigger than the investment prize. The grandmothers have been doing their thing now since year one. It's the oldest prize we've been running. And the grandmothers, it's a panel of grandmothers, for those that don't know, that have all been entrepreneurs in the past. We went looking for people that were other than the standard investor male judge, and we landed on grandmothers. We tried out teenagers as well, but they didn't work as well as grandmothers. They weren't as insightful. But it turns out the grandmothers have an ability, entrepreneurial grandmothers for that matter, have an ability to identify great qualities in entrepreneurs. They vote by and large on the person, first and foremost. Of course, they're very interested in the market as well as the product and those sorts of things.
They understand. I did it, so they understand technology. They're very good.
They do indeed.
And it's very stressful when you have grandmothers. Oh damn!
They're definitely no dummies. Look, when we found them originally, we asked them a few questions that tested their knowledge subtly. I mean, this is 10 years ago already. We asked them things like, "What's your favorite social media?" And 10 years ago, nobody really had a favorite social media, or practically nobody. So when they would answer Twitter 10 years ago, we knew they had some inkling of what was going on. And so we asked a few questions, and then since then it's been the same grandmothers pretty much for the last 10 years. And so they have become even more interested in entrepreneurship themselves. During the off season, they read stories about entrepreneurs and what's happening and whatnot. And then when they come to Startupfest, they've got 2 days of being bombarded with pitches, and so they've become experts.
It won't be as easy as before. It won't be as easy. They become more better and better.
Absolutely.
I have some last questions. One of them, do you speak French, Phil?
Je parle français, oui, en effet.
All right, so I want to start talking about the Startupfest, the French, because we're in Montreal. There's a bilingual community. I don't know, I hear some people saying that there's not enough French in the Startupfest. Is that right?
Well, Startupfest originally started as an English event.
Yes.
And we did that again because the idea was we're going to bring the international scene to Montreal.
Yes.
And look, I mean, internationally,
English.
by and large, it was English. Especially in the early days, we were really reaching out to California and New York and Toronto and stuff like that. And so it was all English. So in the beginning, the event was only in English because that's what it was. And as much as we wanted to do French content, we didn't know how we were going to reconcile it. Everything was new. So for the first few years, that's what it was. But then, not only did we become, more solid and have more experience, because we had never run events before, but also the market evolved. And entrepreneurship became common and mainstream amongst all society.
Yes.
Not just in a particular area, at the Café Laika in the time. And so once there was just more of a hunger for entrepreneurship in all communities, including the Francophone tech community, we said, well, sure, why not? Why don't we start by creating, a half day of content on one stage in French, and let's see if that has an interest. That first time we did that, where we'd expected maybe 150 people would sit in the room, there were close to 500 people that came.
Yes.
We actually changed the room, we had to rejig everything because also there was a big hunger. So since then, now it's been about 3 years, we now do content in French throughout the whole event because there's an interest there. Most entrepreneurs that come, that will listen to the French content, are also there to make international connections. So they walk around the village and they're interacting in English and in French. By adding French to our lineup, it's had a very positive impact on bringing international communities from places like Brussels or France, and delegations coming from Marseille, from Lyon, Bordeaux, Paris, of course.
Yes.
And so it's opened up new opportunities. Of course, I mean, there's few places in the world where you can do content in English and in French. Montreal is one of them.
Yes.
And so we're lucky for that.
You really represented the community, even though it's international. there's great entrepreneurs in the French communities. I always think about Julien Bro. He's
For sure.
He's a good entrepreneur. So yeah.
Yeah, look, there's entrepreneurship knows no language, it knows no color, it knows nothing other than a good idea, and if it can hit market. The investors is a different story.
Yes, true.
And so there we still have a lot of work to do. So we do our part at Startupfest to make sure that 50%, as best as we can, 50% of our speakers are going to be women.
Yes.
Usually we get to about 45.
Okay.
50 is very hard to achieve. We try and stimulate our audience, so we run an inclusion initiative with the BDC,
yes,
where we let in women to Startupfest at 95% off the ticket price.
Okay.
And we've done the same also for any underrepresented groups in entrepreneurship. But where we still need to work, and part of the reason why we're doing this Women in Tech Prize, is we need to stimulate more women getting involved in investing. In angel investing, in VC, and it's happening, but that's important to grow. And so, again, same thing, English, French, female, male, visible minority or not, this needs to be represented at all aspects of the ecosystem.
True.
So look, we're trying to do our best at least to make sure that the audience is there, that they feel welcome and everybody feels safe and happy. And now we're moving on to trying to stimulate investors. So our Women in Technology Prize, the investment prize, that panel will be half women, half men.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
That's great. Startupfest is really built around entrepreneurship, and you see it, Phil, it's a trend right now. Everyone wants to become an entrepreneur. Do you think this will last, this trend of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, look, I mean, entrepreneurship has existed since forever. I mean, in the Middle Ages, there was probably some guy or girl, probably a guy though, that was doing something. To try and sell somebody something or get some skin of some animal in exchange. I don't think that entrepreneurship goes away.
Okay.
I think there are hype cycles on industries.
Yes.
So, at one point it was mobile apps, and then it became wearables, and then it became Internet of Things, and now it's AI, and those trends come and go.
Okay.
Entrepreneurship as a whole doesn't.
Yes.
It happens to, I think here in Quebec in particular, it's become more acceptable to be an entrepreneur.
Yes.
So you get these boom moments,
yes,
of all of a sudden, okay, it's okay to be an entrepreneur. It's okay to have this as a career path. And so people will jump into it. And so we're maybe in that moment in history in Quebec where more people feel comfortable getting into entrepreneurship.
Yes.
But I don't think entrepreneurship as a whole will ever have a bust.
Okay.
I mean, it's entrepreneurship. There's always new ideas. There's always new technologies that permit new ideas. There's always new things to do. And so I don't really see a lull in that. I can imagine very easily a day where AI is no longer what it is today. I mean, of course. But I think it still has a ways to go.
No, it will always be there. Entrepreneurship as a whole will be there. Maybe just, like you say, some trends will go down the up, but it will always be there.
When was the last time you really heard or talked about big data? There was a period of time through, we've been doing this for 10 years, so I can trace back year after year and say, this is what was big that year. And, there was a year where everybody was talking about big data. If you had a startup, it better have had some data exhaust. And, what's the data? What's the data, that's coming out of that
It's
startup?
true. Some year was, I'm the Facebook of this, I'm the Uber of this. I was adapted to the big 10, the big company.
User generated at one point was the big thing. Again, mobile in the beginning, it was just the idea of being mobile. 10 years ago, we didn't have, and we had mobile devices, but they weren't what they are today. And so most people at best a website.
Yeah, yes, I remember that.
And then in year two of Startupfest, it was like, okay, everything is mobile now. What's your mobile strategy? Nobody talks about that anymore. Now it's just de facto. And I think AI will get there. Eventually it'll be that, you just have AI in your product. It's not even a question.
True.
Delivered from, Microsoft or Amazon or Salesforce or somebody else.
All right. And for the last question of the podcast, almost 10 years, Phil, of the Startupfest, where do you see this going? What are the big plans for the Startupfest? Are you growing? Are you evolving?
Look, we grow every year, for sure. And so that's a natural path. It's not a forced reality. Bigger is not necessarily always better, and so we're always challenging ourselves to be relevant.
Yes.
It's not running after growth just for the sake of growth in terms of size, because that's a very difficult thing to maintain. What we need to grow is the value that we drive.
Okay.
So our thinking is, how do we drive more value throughout the whole year? How do we offer people things, entrepreneurs, things that they can only get at Startupfest and things of those sorts. And so that's where I see us going. I see us being more holistic in our approach of supporting entrepreneurship beyond, the 5 days, once a year in Montreal in summer. We do run other events around the world, and we do run other events in other cities here in Canada. And so, our business as a whole is growing, of course. Startupfest is a very particular beast. It's like Montreal. It's big enough to have critical mass, but it's small enough to be intimate, where you get to meet everybody and get to. So, we
adapt to.
We toy with growth, but we keep it very reasonable and realistic.
Any big surprise of the 10 years anniversary? You want to keep it secret?
Well, that would be next year. So, so I don't know. Big surprises. Look, this year's edition is 9 lives.
Okay.
So the theme of this year's edition is 9 lives. Being our 9th year. And so if we survive our 9th year, we'll talk about the 10th year. For now,
you're going to be there 10. Yeah, this year's going to be huge, but next year's going to be bigger. Our 10 years anniversary of the Startupfest. I'm glad to have you on the show, Phil. Thank you very much. I appreciate. Any last word to the people that are watching?
No, have fun. Build a business and come out to Startupfest to showcase it.
All right. Thank you very much.